Thank you very much, Heinrich, for coming on our show.
Yeah, thank you, Bernie, for inviting me, and I very much appreciate, and thank you also for Phil for laying out the whole story of these tragic events in Ukraine in 2014 in Odessa. Yes, I'm running this little place here in downtown Berlin, place for a lot of activists and artists, and many tourists come here and many regulars, and we have events here. And I opened in 2005, and I came across Oleg Mujika in 2014, the summer of 2014, when he moved to Berlin. And he has been actually very active promoting the truth and the facts and the crimes that happened on that very day in Odessa, where he actually lost his brother, as far as I know, and he kind of made it out of the house by some miracle. So he is also, you can look at my YouTube channel, Antikrieg TV, where I had some short interviews with him and documenting what he did here in Berlin. Last year he did a vigil, like a little event close to the Brandenburg Gate with pictures of the victims of Odessa. And I've seen him also at the annual Easter March this year. It's a peace event that is taking place every year. So he is fine and well, and I think you would be able to maybe get him on the show and find somebody who can translate. So I'm active here since that time, since 2014. Also, one of my main issues here in the cafe was peace with Russia. And I did for quite some time, for all these years. I always had a weekly jam session here in this basement room where I'm sitting right now. And we had international musicians, but also quite a few Russians and Ukrainians who were meeting here, playing music together. At that time also there was a lot of diverse opinions about the relation and about the Ukrainian problem, but people were still able to communicate and to do music together, which is now much more difficult. People are like splitting up. You have music bands who split up, not doing anything together anymore. It's like very tragic to see it, you know. And I also agree to most of the things that Phil was mentioning about the conflict. The conflict started actually in 2014, when the eastern provinces kind of, after the coup d'etat, said we do not want to be under the rule of Kiev, under this Russophobe government there that is like banning our language, and started to wage a real war against these areas there. They shelled civilian neighborhoods. They completely destroyed the airport of Donetsk. They killed many people. And then there was this ongoing conflict that now got into this extension of it, you could call it, as a defensive action of the Russian military that also, according to numerous reports now that come out during the last days, has had plannings to attack the regions in the east, and even to attack the area, the Crimea. So there have been documents found by the Russian military that are kind of proving that. We have to see how much they document this later. But there have been also already representations to the international media even. but this has not been here in the Western media, which is displaying like a very racist, Russophobic view that is shocking the Russian community here in Berlin and all over Germany, because especially Germany, and I say that as a German, that I feel very, very ashamed of what Germany is doing here. And many people say that Germany is not independent. It's like kind of relying on US orders and stuff. But I think they played a very central role in this conflict. Already during the Maidan time, German politicians actually traveled to the Maidan, speaking to the people there and telling them to be more aggressive and to more demanding to the Ukrainian government. And even afterwards, the whole time there was, like in the German media, there was a lot of Russophobic talk and commentary. So now you cannot find any alternative news about the conflict if you're not really well tuned to how the internet works. You will not find any websites reporting on what is going on there. And actually what is going on there is on the same level Phil was talking about, but it even got worse when you really look at the facts on the ground now. It's like unbelievable what kind of brutality these Nazi forces are committing there against prisoners of war, against civilians. They tape people in public places to lampposts and to trees and beat them up in the presence of police even participating in it. There are cars passing by, people are really seeing it. I wouldn't say that the majority of the Ukrainian people, which are good people also, are Nazis, but these Azov and right-wing and neo-fascist and fascist forces are very much embedded in public life, in the institutions, in the military, in the secret service, in the police, and also in the government functions of that country, and they are ruling. And most people who do not like it, they are very afraid to speak out. So that is the problem we have now, that these forces are telling soldiers, if you're deserting, if you do not want to fight, we're going to shoot you, we're going to fight you, we're going to kill you. And there are videos of that where you can see it, that they do this kind of stuff. And they are like unbelievable, brutal forces. And what happened in Mariupol, reported about here in the Western media, especially also in the German media, which I follow very intensely, they are telling this is like the Russian forces bombing the city, killing civilians, kidnapping people and bringing them to Russia, and all these kind of horror stories that are actually not correct, that are not right, because the fact is that the Azov forces who ruled the city until the very last people now came out from the steel plant, and we saw that there are Nazis with swastikas and SS signs and all these symbols all over their bodies, which have been all documented by the Russian forces. They actually held the civilians as human shields in the city. They could not leave the basements of the buildings. The Azov battalions were hiding in and using as shooting places to target the Russian forces. When you see video coming out of the Russians actually going into the city, you see that the civilians are, in most cases, I think I didn't see anything else, are very happy and welcoming the Russian army. They bring them food, they bring water, they bring them all kinds of stuff. They promise them to clean up the city, They do all kinds of stuff for the population. They are seen as liberators. They're not seen as people who were trying to kill them. This is like all, I would call it Western propaganda. Unfortunately, it's war propaganda that is running here. And we are being told to send heavy weaponry to Ukraine to support the army, which actually, if you really look at the situation, doesn't stand a chance against the Russian army, because the Russian army has 3 million people in reserve. They could wipe the place out in a few days, but they don't do that. They have orders to move slowly and slowly and slowly, and to kind of not kill the civilians if it's not really necessary, which sometimes it probably is, because if you have armed people hiding in these blocks, in these apartment blocks, then sure, civilians are killed too at the end of the day, but they do not, it is not their plan, you know? So this is the situation, and I see here in Germany, also in the peace movement and in the left movement too, it's all about, very much naturally about stopping the NATO. It's against weaponizing the Ukraine even more, but most groups are condemning the Russian aggressive war. They call it a criminal war. They call it like an unjust war. They call it like something they reject outright. And my position personally is here that maybe you can see the banner in the back. I bring that to all manifestations I'm taking part in. I say, hands off Russia. This is like an aggression of the NATO against Russia, and they have some right. I would not call all right. I'm also a pacifist. I do not support wars normally, you know, but this war is something that has a reason, that has a story that started earlier and that was never reported about here in the West. So that is my point. And then I also want to mention, I recently came across a US website. It's called forward.org. It's a Jewish website. They are reporting about the fact that in the Ukraine you have like hundreds and hundreds of monuments and places and avenues named after these Nazi collaborators who worked together with the Nazis, were killing Jews and Poles and anything they did not like. And I think it's crazy. It's the only country in Europe where you can find these kind of things. You know, you have this monument of Babi Jar at the outskirts of Kiev. Actually, you have streets that have been named after Nazi collaborators leading to this place where the Nazis actually killed in 2 days like more than 30,000 Jews. And I think the German government, especially the government, should be ashamed to support these kind of right-wing fascist people in the Ukraine, and even arming them and calling for the defeat of Russia, for the victory of Ukraine, and rejecting any idea about negotiating now, because that is the problem. We need negotiations now. We need like a ceasefire, and we need like real talks about the neutrality of the Ukraine. We need the guarantees that they will not enter NATO, and we need guarantees that these neo-Nazi structures are taken out of the country completely. And that is actually the agenda of the Russian forces. This has been the agenda of President Putin, which here in Germany, he's called a fascist. They call the guy, this president of Russia, of which country we killed almost 30 million people in the Second World War. They call this president a Nazi. I think this is like outrageous.
Yes, yeah.
And they have an ambassador here in Berlin Andrei Melnich, he is traveling all over the place here in Germany asking for more weapons. He has been on talk shows, on the evening news, everywhere. He's an ardent supporter of Mr. Bandera, this fascist in the Ukraine. He laid down flowers on his grave a few years ago, posted on Twitter. He's defending the guy as a national hero. And you have the president of the Ukraine, or the Kiev regime, Zelensky, who himself, for some crazy reason, is himself a Jew. He is like promoting this guy, and he's also actually allowing these monuments to be put up. And I think this is like something that is not being supported by Israel. This is not supported by the Jewish community also in the US. And I think we should really get clear of what is going on in this conflict now. It's actually the argument of President Putin that it's a denazification is in many respects, I think, a correct analysis. And I think we should come to the conclusion that we somehow have to support this Russian ideas about this conflict and how long it's going on already, and what we can do to kind of solve it in a way that it's ending, and that also the Ukrainians come to their senses, because many people in the Ukraine are just, they have been brainwashed maybe, but also many people live in fear of being arrested, of being tortured, of being killed, of being put into some dungeons. And you see, here in Germany, you have now like one channel on, I get it on my satellite dish, you know, on my satellite receiver. Since the war started, this channel is online. It's called Ukraine 24 News. And they have an English version and the Ukrainian version. On this channel, you had two very important and very, very unbelievable items being given. One was of a Ukrainian medical officer who is speaking in English. He is promoting the idea or he promoted the idea, at least in this one piece, that Russian prisoners of war, when they end up in medical care, they should be castrated, he said. They should be seen as enemies of Russia, like animals, and they should be taken off what they hold. They should be castrated. He said that publicly on TV. Yet another guy, he came on, he said he's a moderator of one of these shows, and he said, I'm not a member of the military, of Ukrainian military, but I want to say one thing here. All Russian citizens should be killed, whether it's men, it's women, or it's children. They all should be killed because they are like not worth living. This is running on the Ukrainian channel here on the German airwaves, and nobody is speaking up. The ambassador goes around, the president is speaking on video linkage, and for example, in German parliament too, this supportive Jewish president, supportive of the fascists in Ukraine, he was speaking, and actually everybody got up and gave a standing ovation when he finished his speech. When the guy went to Greece, for example, he took two Azov Nazis along. They actually said, we are Greek fighting in Mariupol for the liberation of the city. And then the Greeks actually figured out that these guys are Nazis, and half of the parliament left the building during his speech. In Italy, Zelensky showed up without the Nazis, and he 1/3 of the senators and the Congress members left the room. So you can see to the extent German politics and the German population, which is also brainwashed by the media, is supportive of this kind of political situation, siding up with the very same people Germany was siding up during the Second World War against the Russian in the demand and the urge to kill all Russians and many, many Jews. And I think this is outrageous and needs to be addressed. You know, so I'm very thankful again for being part of this webinar here, and I hope that our message gets out to more people to get a more clear view of what is going on in that country, which is very close to our borders. And we have now many refugees also in Berlin, and I very much feel in sympathy for them too. But we are misled.
Yes.
This is not a good sign.
Well, Heinrich, thank you so much. Very grateful for this.
But I have to say one more word.
Yes,
you know,
Heinrich.
I'm here in my cafe. I meet many people. No? I mean, it's never crowded, but there are many people going through. And I'm telling, I have a poster with which is showing Putin as a native Indian, like a little bit like Winnetou. Okay, I give it to the people. And then mostly they like that image, because if they're anti-Putin or pro-Putin, doesn't matter. They take it. And then I tell them my story in some way, like I told it to you.
Yes.
And I have to say, a lot of people are aware of these problems.
Yes.
A lot of people are in sympathy with Russia, and a lot of people show some understanding for us. So I do not think we are a minority.
No.
We have here in Germany also a good part of the population, maybe I would estimate like 20%, who are like against war with Russia. They do not, they regret what happened, and they really want to find a solution. So we are not like a very small minority. We are like a large minority, put it that way.
A silent minority. What you've just presented leads on seamlessly leads on to the next thing I want to do. It's about the media. Our guest speaker was a guy called Ray McGovern, who you may have heard of. He was
he was here in the cafe as well.
Oh, right. Okay, great. Yeah. Well, Ray very kindly came on our show on the 16th of May. And I'm just going to show you a little bit of a clip from the recording I made of Ray. Mickey Max, okay? Is it one of your brainchild, Mickey Max? Or did you hear that from somebody else?
It was actually, I saw what Eisenhower had talked about with respect to the MIC, and I saw that it had broadened extensively. And I tried to embrace every one of the institutions that really is responsible now for wielding power in our country. And I was delighted when Stephen Cohen, the late Stephen Cohen, emailed me and said, "You got it, Ray. You got them all." And so did Pepe Escobar and all kinds of people on that spectrum. So it's beginning to catch on now, and I appreciate Bernie, you're giving it a plug, because I think it really does indicate how incestuous everything is. And what I would point out especially is that M in the middle, right? Media. Media is the fulcrum. It's the cornerstone. Without the media, you can't make it work. And the media now is fully co-opted into supporting the rest of the Mickey Mouse. And Wonder of Wonders, of course, it's owned by the rest of the Mickey Mouse. So people should not be surprised. They should be angry. They should be smart enough, I hope, to figure out a way to get our co-citizens informed in a way that they can make educated decisions.